Hi, everybody. Michael Haas back. We're at another episode of Debits and Credits with Haas and Dawe. Today we're gonna go back to the audit world, but this time instead of our audit world, we're gonna go to your audit world. Internal audits, something that you all can set up within your operation, within your office, and how you can catch problems before the regulators do, and before problems come up that can be very costly to the company. So what is an internal audit? An internal audit is, as it says, it's an audit that's internal. That's sort of silly explanation, but that's what we're talking about. Set up something within your company for a way that, whether it be an owner, a manager, a designated employee, or employees of the company, take on a role that they're reviewing certain aspects of what you're doing. In this case, of escrow files, how to find errors, how to train escrow officers and escrow assistants, how to help employees keep a desired level of quality, how to keep the operation going so that there are no problems that will come back and bite you later, biting you from the regulators finding a mistake or finding a big problem that needs to be fixed. It's something that may open you up to where hackers can get into your system, or bad players can come in and either create some bad escrows for you, can steal money, can create a very adverse situation for it. And so what it's coming under, I guess, what would you call it, a risk management umbrella. And so this is a benefit where you all can figure out a way to operate, where you can identify errors, identify ways to improve the processes that you go through, being very proactive, not being reactive, not being coming in after the fact and having to fix problems that would you otherwise could have found. It's identifying training opportunities, and this is situations that can be from anything as simple as the daily banking, as to how to keep track of what transactions came in during the day, what monies went out, how to protect the trust account, even how to protect the general account as well, how to come up with some opportunities as far as making your business reputation, making the way that you do work within the community is going to be held in a very high standard. And because people will be very, very appreciative of good service, and very appreciative of how you process an escrow and how you communicate and how you're giving customer service. These are all things that will stand out. So if you find ways internally that you can come up to protect everything within the company, from the reputation down to the last penny, and have everybody be on board with this, is something that will benefit the company in the overall basis. Now, one other thing internally that to keep track of is any threat of oversight. I guess that may be too strong of a word, but if people know, and whether it be internally or even externally from customers or from working with your bankers or people or real estate agents, or people come in touch with you, if they know you're doing oversight on everything, it's a deterrent for people thinking that they can get away with something shady, or that they can steal money, or they can hide something. And it may also cause, this whole concept of oversight may also allow employees an opportunity to slow down. It may cause them to slow down, but also an opportunity to slow down and be more careful, so they're not going to be caught doing something that they shouldn't be doing. But more positively, avoid being caught making a mistake. It's how to prevent the human error factor. And as we get more and more computerized, and we've talked a lot about in our world and in the escrow world, and so many presentations on artificial intelligence. Well, artificial intelligence, it's been around for a long time. We used to call them cats when I first started auditing, computer-assisted techniques that would help you find problems in doing audits. But finding ways that you can help prevent human error, and not just fraud, but just transpositions, or forgetting to send a document out, or having a proration done backwards on a closing statement. All these ways of creating this internal audit program is a way that can help prevent errors, fraud, mistakes, and making your company look very positive in view of the community. Now, what procedures make up internal auditing? Well, this can be the very, very basic of reviewing an escrow file. So an escrow file, and whether it has closed or it's right before closing, what review process takes place. Is someone looking to see that all the documents have been sent out to the right people? But people check to see that the information to the buyer to be able to send in closing funds has been done properly. Has everything been done to make sure that the funds are being protected? And how to review the file from top to bottom. And it can be done, like I said, after closing, which is a way to have learning and training sessions with escrow officers and escrow assistants on an after-the-fact basis of, oh, we saw this, and this is what things you can look at. There are ways that you can do things a little bit more efficiently. Or reviewing escrow files during closing as disbursements are being prepared, or disbursements are being sent out, disbursements are being wired out. How is the wire process being addressed? How is the relationship with the bank? And it can be done as a spot check, where to make sure that nothing's being missed in the closing. Now, also in going back relative to reviewing the files or in doing an internal audit, how are you addressing the incoming wire process with your buyers, or even with sellers who have to send in money, or on a refinance with borrowers who have to send in money? How are you verifying the incoming wire process, and how are you making sure that your buyers are not being spoofed or scammed with emails or texts telling them to send the money to a different type of bank or to a different account, not to your escrow trust account? This is, again, an internal audit process. Is how do you do that? And are you keeping up with the times to make sure that no new scams are out there that people are trying to pull? So you're staying up to date with that. Or even going the fact that an internal process is when someone has wired you money, do you actually go to your bank account? Because so many people, if not all of you, have access to online banking, where you can go online, open up your bank account, and make sure that incoming wire transfer actually has been credited to your account, not just relying on an email from the bank. Because we've seen where some banks' emails are being spoofed, and you're getting something that looks like a bank's email when it really isn't. And so with outgoing wires, are you going through all the protocol, all the steps on, and we've talked about that in a previous podcast, all the steps to make sure the wire is going to the right place? Are you doing spot checking on file? There's surprise audits on file to make sure the process is going smooth and unpredictable. In that, are you reviewing larger complex files prior to closing? What transactions are the riskiest? It could be a big commercial deal. It could be a large apartment building. It could be where you have multiple sellers. It could be where you have sellers, some are trusts, some are LLCs. It could be that they're multi-member LLCs. It could be a single-member LLC where the single member is another LLC. So there are different layers that you want to be aware of, and make sure that you're checking is the file a risky file. Not necessarily a bad file where there's a bad player involved, but just risky that it has more challenges to it. Are you reviewing documentation internally? Are you looking at the deed, the grant deed, the deed of trust? Are you looking at the lender's instructions? Are you looking at what they call the RPA, the real estate purchase agreement, which they have for real estate, for residential, or they have for commercial, they have for exchanges, they have for refinances, all these different types of transactions. And let's say you're doing a bulk sale, or you're doing a business opportunity sale. Let's say you're doing a holding escrow. Let's say it's a liquor license transfer. All these different types of escrows will bring different challenges to it. And you want to make sure everyone in your operation has been informed, has been trained, and then has been, in effect, spot checked, or it's the surprise quiz type of thing when we were in school that we weren't expecting. And so to make sure that we really are up to date on our knowledge and our information. Are you double checking escrow instructions? Are you having your general provisions reviewed on a regular basis by legal counsel? Are you checking on the vesting? Vesting is a legal concept. It's one thing to know that who your buyer is, and it can be two people who are, whether they're taken as joint tenants or taken as tenants in common. They can be taken as tenants to the entirety in non-community property states. They can be taken as community property. It could be community property with rights of survivorship. All these different vestings are very important from a legal standpoint. It doesn't change who your players are. It doesn't change who your buyers are. But the way title is held from a vesting standpoint has a very important consequence when people pass, when people get married, get unmarried. All these things matter. And so it's important to make sure your vesting is done properly. Authorizations to disperse. Do you have the proper authorizations to disperse funds? And whether it's going to be going to, you're talking about going to the seller, whether it's going to an entity, whether it's going to a trust, and if it's a single member LLC, who's it going to? And are these people supplying the right tax identification numbers? Are you comfortable where you're sending the money to and how it's being sent? By a wire transfer, by a cashier's check, or just by a regular trust account check? Make sure all your policies are being followed for the file. The file structure, the way your files are done. In some companies, escrow officers are given the leeway to have the file order be in what they're comfortable with. In some companies, it's strict that everybody has to follow the same order. Well, make sure that's being done. Are notaries being done properly? Some people will require notaries on sale proceeds to make sure that they're getting the right information. Some people have an instruction on outgoing wire transfers that once an instruction is received from a seller on how proceeds are to be dispersed, that those instructions can never be changed, particularly if it's an outgoing wire. And if people come in and say, well, I've changed my bank account, or I've changed my instruction, I want to change how the wire is going out, the response in many cases is, I'm sorry, we're not changing, or now we'll give you a check. And we're not going to, because the concern is that if someone's changing the wire instructions, that someone is scamming. They're going to try and get the money diverted someplace else. And any findings that come up relative to the file should be discussed with people who are involved with the file. If it's something that they give you better information, or if it's something that it has to do with if it's a training issue, it may be something specific. Talk to that specific escrow officer or that escrow team. If it's something that can benefit the entire company, then you turn into a company-wide training session, because you want to have training sessions on a regular basis. And whether it's once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or once a month, you should have company-wide training sessions, or just everybody gets together over the morning coffee, or bring in a lunch and make it a lunch and learn to go over new policies, or policies that need to be revisited, or policies that have been skipped and need to really be looked at, or how to take care of the fact that there are certain procedures that are now new to the escrow world that have been heard about, and maybe have a webinar from the California Escrow Association, or from the Escrow Institute of California, or from the American Escrow Association, or from CLTA, the California Land Title Association, or from ALT, the American Land Title Association. All these types of organizations have information that can be used as for company-wide training. And maybe policies need to be revised if appropriate. And we also have learned, and we've been at some escrow association conferences lately, such as the American Escrow Association conference and the Escrow Institute of California conference. A lot of times, from the position of management, you need to stop talking and you need to listen, because a lot of times some of the escrow officers and escrow assistants have some ideas, or they've heard of some things on the grapevine that are worth listening to, and maybe it's beneficial for your process and for what goes on in your operations, because anything that can help prevent an escrow loss is worth listening to. It goes back to the whole thing we've talked about before. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and the penny saved can at the end of the day probably save you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, if something goes sour relative to somebody skipping a step, or a file not being reviewed properly. So come up with an internal audit process for your company. There's not a one size fits all. It's something that works well with your operation, and whether you have 2 people or you have 20 people in your company, is something worth looking at. That's something to think about. And we definitely here at Haas and Dawe can help you formulate, mold, and come up with an internal audit process, an internal audit program that's good for you. So that's internal auditing in our episode of Debits and Credits from Haas and Dawe. See you next time.